So happy Tuesday to everybody. Tuesday, October 21st, and fall is finally arriving. Wet, cold, it's coming. Everything that we've been waiting for. Um, Today, oh, you know what? I got to do this first. Thank you. So for those who voted or didn't know, yeah, Brenda Davis and I are both have been elected. I'm thanking you guys because I think that made a huge difference. But Brenda representing the gold side, I get to represent the blue side, and both of us representing HRC and you guys with the North Oakland County Board of Realtors. So we will be sitting on that board for the next 3 years and all the excitement that comes along with it. So today, this week in real estate, we'll see how much time we've got here with this that I've got today. EMDs, they're always out there, and we want to bring clarification to those. So I'm referring to this more as a refresher for some of you, clarification for others, and there's a couple other things that I've got with us today too. So let me first. This was one that just popped up, and I thought we got to share this. So there it is. RealComp just released their statistics for August year over year, and there's some just kind of interesting things, but you should take notes because we should be able to quote these numbers. And the closer that you can quote to the point number, the better it is because that brings legitimacy and credibility to your presentation. And when I say presentation, your communication. But here's the interesting part: closed sales year to year, year over year through August, up 2.8%. So closed sales, we've actually seen an increase, which we haven't really been seeing that. But here's the interesting part, because this is what's coming into our pockets, is that there's only 2.9% that are pending right now, or 2.9 down from the previous year. The median sale price, however, this is always, I guess we'll call it good news, depending upon how you're looking at this, but up 5.9%. New listings. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and we're seeing there's a change coming in the market. So we're up 7.7% in the number of new listings year over year, which goes along with the available inventory. So we know we've been historical low inventory. We're still really there, but homes on the market, 26,296, which is up 15.8%. Now, what typically is going to correspond with that? Well, we got more listings, more homes on the market. Oddly enough, average days on market are still only at 36. Still a seller's market. So we know if we haven't sold in 30 days, guys, there is either something wrong with your marketing or you're out of balance. And if you don't know what I mean by out of balance, you'll have to stay tuned here. Maybe we'll discuss that on one of the futures, but we're into the business development series right now. We just kicked it off today. If you're going, well, what's the HRC business development series? Series of 17 classes. Look, if your business is where it's been or where you want it to be, I would suggest that you join. I've got one young lady who's been in the business for over 40 years that's joining me today. One to consider. All right. So I just wanted to point that out because it hit today. So let me take you into this. Here's the first question. Can a buyer or seller just decide that they want to fire you? Can they do that? All right. You can either take yourself off mute or put that into chat because we want everybody to get that thought and what you think.
Yeah.
Can someone just fire you?
I would think yes.
Okay.
I thought it had to be mutually agreed upon.
Linda brings up an interesting point. Okay. Uh-huh. So check in the chat. See, we get this going. I'm smiling, so you know what that means. The answer is
Oh,
no. They can't just fire you. It is a very common misconception. Call it a myth, if you will. The public believes that this can happen. Worst is that most real estate agents, and I'm going to say most, think that they can just be fired, and they can't be. You see, there's a key to it, and that is that you signed on behalf of the broker a listing contract or a buyer representation contract. You signed it, but who else signed it? The buyer and the seller are signing these agreements. Therefore, it's bilateral. It took two to enter it. It takes two to leave it, unless there's something in the contract that stipulates otherwise. But guys, we don't have that. This is basically the same language for the buyer contract or the listing contract. The verbiage is pretty much the same. Cancellation. This agreement can be canceled or revoked only by mutual consent in writing. So, my buddy Jason, I hire him to sell my house. He and I have a drunken brawl one night, and I don't like him anymore. Can I fire him? No, not unless he and I agree that we can't work with each other after our little brawl. I hire him and we have no disputes. It's just after 30 days, he hasn't sold my house. Can I fire him? Not without him agreeing to break the contract. Can he fire me? It's a bilateral agreement. It doesn't give either party the right to fire the other without their consent. So we'll talk. And Jason, I know why you were thinking that because of verbiage that we've done. We say fire them. They won't reduce the price to be able to make it saleable. They won't do the things necessary to make the property saleable. I'll drop another hint. Um, it's out of balance and they won't do anything to put it in balance. You can't fire them. Now, we'll say that we can, but here's what we know. We've got to have a mutual release from the contract. Everybody good with that one?
no, Darwin.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Say you do fire someone, that just means they can challenge it if they want, or they can accept being fired. If they challenge it, then, but if they accept it,
Well, let me read this again. This agreement can be canceled or revoked only by mutual consent. So, yeah, I can tell you I'm going to fire you because as an agent, I'm going to fire you, my seller, because your property is unsaleable and I don't want to deal with it. But you still have to sign it to release it. Otherwise, I'm bound to continue to live up to the terms of the listing agreement and vice versa. So a seller can't say, well, I'm just not going to show it. Well, no, it says you will allow us to show the property. It's in the contract. So it's very important that we know what our contracts say. And again, I'm going to try to put one of these in every week that we just take a look at the terms in our agreements so that we know exactly what they say. And this is one of those where we have the biggest misunderstanding.
What
So,
about Darwin? What about
yep.
letting it expire though? I mean, if you get
Uh,
close to the end, they could let it run out. I know there's protection time and on the listing agreement,
yeah.
but I don't think there's anything in the buying agreement, is there?
Well, remember, it's the same thing in regards to cancellation. And the term of the purchase or your buyer representation contract will hold just like the term of a listing contract with the seller. So they can say, well, I'm going to go buy it from somebody else. Well, I'm going to tell you, make sure that you, what's
They,
the
they,
word?
they can't buy a house that I showed them though.
Well, they can't
Otherwise,
buy a house without paying you.
right.
And maybe that's another one that we take a look at to the future, Kevin. But yeah, just it's not only they can't buy one that you've shown them, they can't buy one because they're still under contract with an agreement to pay you compensation.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is right up till the expiration date, because there's an ending date on that contract, correct?
Correct. But
Okay,
even the buyer contract says that, here you put 6 months, then that would be on any property you've shown them,
right, okay,
unless they hire another agent to show them homes.
okay.
Yep. And then it's like, it's done. You might be able to call procuring cause, but that's now there's a unbroken series of events for
Yeah,
procuring cause.
right.
And as NAR gets their stuff together and they get further clarification to that, it's like I say, it's just going to be really, really difficult one to be able to prove. Okay. Any other questions on this one? I always, I should just put a 7-second clock up there just to make sure. All right. Let's move on. Here we go. Can you collect compensation without a contract signed by the buyer? Can you collect compensation for representing a buyer without a contract?
You can if they are nice enough to do it, but they don't have to.
Mm,
I
here we
would say
go. Yep.
no. If you
Linda's got a
don't have,
no. No,
yeah,
no, no. I'm looking in a chat room here. Yep, no. Uh-oh. Lori, guess what? It
I don't
is
mind
no.
being wrong because I'm learning.
Oh,
Everybody, I've only been in for 6 weeks.
and she's already got deals on the board, so she's doing awesome. Um, so the answer is no. Here's what we got. Because of the settlement, and that's the easiest way for us to be able to look at it, we know that the settlement wanted the buyer to be responsible for their own agent in the or broker in the compensation that that buyer's broker would receive from the buyer. They want the buyer to be responsible. And of course, that wiped out any offer of compensation from a listing broker. Even today, is however you look at it, it's wiped it out. It used to be a guaranteed compensation. It is no longer. And the only way is through a contract. Now, I'll give you one exception. When you're the listing agent and you represent only the seller, I can have the seller and the buyer, but I only represent the seller. I'm working with the buyer, but all my compensation is being paid by the seller. And that's done because of the listing contract. Okay. I'm looking at the faces I can see. What questions you got on that one? Nobody? Everybody's good? We're clear with that one? So bottom line, and I'm going to bring this one out. It's now it's really old, but if you sign a buyer agreement and you left the amount of compensation blank, how much do you get paid? Thank you, Lori. You are correct.
0.
0. If I'm still thinking old school and I actually put on a signed buyer agency agreement, 0. How much do I get paid?
0.
Well, here, let me do this though. But Darwin, what if the seller said they'd pay? How much do you get?
0.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, it's zero, guys. So we need that because the buyer is paying it. Simple way we've got to look at it, buyer is paying it. 95% of the time, probably. Where is the buyer getting the money to pay it? I think
From the
Holly, you
seller.
said it. Say it again.
The seller.
The seller, or if you will, through the transaction. Yep. Okay. So we're in the purchase agreement asking the seller, and I want you to know, by the way, that our purchase agreement is written different from most. Ours says the seller is to contribute the blank percent to be applied toward buyer's broker's fee. So, yeah. Is it the seller? Yes. Is it the transaction? Yes. What's the best way to help everybody involved in the transaction understand how it's working? And in the end, ain't nothing changed. It's just how we have to do the paperwork. I'm looking at Lisa. Let's see. Does the buyer pay the $395 in that instance where you are the listing agent and just dealing with the buyer or working with the buyer? The answer would be no. We don't have a signed contract committing the buyer to pay that $395. $395 is part of our compensation. Okay, good question. Everybody good there? What questions do we have? All right, let's move on. EMDs as a refresher. Here's just some of the things that I'm going to try to keep myself on topic because I'm running in a lot of different directions. But as it says here, the extent of damages is frequently challenging to demonstrate. So the whole point of having an earnest money deposit, it sets a baseline for what that damage would be. So if a seller, even if the seller has not, I should say, even if the buyer, am I saying that right? Even if the seller has incurred no damages, or vice versa to an extent, we've just got it covered. So here's some things. Some purchase agreements provide that in the event of the buyer's default, this is what we're really talking about. If the buyers are in default, the seller is only entitled to the EMD. Now, I want you to catch this. This is a huge misunderstanding. Most real estate agents think that, well, there's a $5,000 earnest money deposit. If you back off, you're going to lose your $5,000. What's the purchase agreement say? Because it may not just be the EMD, it's what's the purchase agreement say. So other purchase agreements, as it says here, provide that the sellers are entitled to the EMD and actual damages. Ours allows it to go in that direction. So you can't just say, well, what happens if I back out? Well, you'd lose your earnest money deposit. Always, always, always know what our purchase agreement says. And importantly, when you have somebody else's purchase agreement on your listing, what does it say? So when I was managing in an office and anybody ever brought me something, it was, okay, bring me the paperwork. We need to know specifically what the agreement says that the buyer and seller have signed. Now, once a real estate broker has the MD in hand, here's what we know. The broker must deposit it within 2 banking days. And this is a key part of receiving notice of acceptance by all parties. So it's not just 2 banking days. And by the way, it's the brokerage what does state law and the occupancy code say when you receive an earnest money deposit? What must you do? Deliver it to the broker as soon as
Soon
possible.
as possible.
Yeah, that's really the key. Now, could that be 24 hours? Yep. Could it be 12 hours? Could it be 1 minute? It's as soon as possible. Okay. So it's not that you have 2 banking days or 48 hours as it's commonly referred to. It's the broker has 2 banking days from receipt of notice of acceptance by all parties. So that's a key part to this. And yes, it will get that detailed sometimes as to whether or not somebody's in breach of contract. If the buyer and seller wish to agree that the EMD will be deposited at a future date, and I'm not recommending this, but I just copied this one off of somebody else. For example, the waiver of the inspection contingency. Don't do that, guys. Don't suggest it. There's going to be a reason, and I'll tell you in it shortly. Then the purchase agreement must provide that the buyer will not deliver the check to the broker's office until such later date. Does our purchase agreement allow us to do that, by the way?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, we've got a contingency in there that says we can make it whatever number of days after the acceptance agreement.
We either have it, 0, or we'll have it within 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. So it doesn't actually give us, and this is where I threw some of you off, it doesn't have a long line that says upon removal of inspection contingency. That's going to have to go into additional conditions. But ours is written in such a way that the buyer and the seller can agree that the buyer will provide the earnest money deposit within blank days. So we're provided a purchase agreement that allows us to cover ourselves with this first paragraph. If we were to get creative, however, we would have to put that under additional conditions. Let's see. If the buyer agrees to deliver the check at some point in the future, the buyer's offer should make clear when that check will be delivered. Our purchase agreement is really simple. Put in the number of days. When a purchase agreement calls for the MD to be delivered at some point in the future, the broker should have procedures in place to make sure that that check is delivered as required. Now, if you're wondering why your manager and your admin are like really on you for those things, they have procedures in place. And I'll tell you, one of the best things that we've done to be able to help with getting that procedure covered is sky slope. So when they're persisting, when they're hounding for documents or saying that, hey, did you get this? There's a reason for all of them. But I can tell you, guys, if there's one thing that you don't want to screw up with, it's an earnest money deposit. Just don't make those errors. Now, let's keep on talking with this one. If the seller discovers that the EMD was never collected from the buyer, and the seller believes that they are entitled to the EMD after a failed transaction, everybody got that one? The seller may pursue the realtor who failed to collect the EMD or failed to advise the seller the EMD when required under the purchase agreement. Ruh-roh. That means the seller could go after me as a listing agent for not knowing or not advising. So, guys, why do we ask for a earnest money deposit, a copy or a verification that it's received? Well, let me remind you again of the old Latin proverb. I think everybody's heard of it, but maybe not. The old Latin proverb, anus protectus. You know, let that one sink in for a second. It normally takes a bit. Cover your backside. Get a copy of the earnest money deposit so that you're relieving yourselves and the brokerage from a seller being able to come back on you because you didn't advise them. Well, I didn't know. One of the biggest things I've seen repeatedly back in my days of teaching continuing education from court cases. Ignorance is not a defense. You should have known. That is the way I always saw those things. Everybody good with that one? So let me make sure I've got myself set. Okay. Nope. Let me go back. I'm going to leave it on here. I said, hey, don't do a earnest money deposit upon removal of inspection contingency. Why do you think I'm kind of professing coaching? Don't do that. What's the biggie on that? Well, let me throw this out. How long does it take to be able to get the final results and an agreement on the inspection contingency to where you can remove it? Does it happen like within a day or two? Or does it take sometimes 10 to 15 days? In 10 to 15 days later, are you thinking about an earnest money deposit? And you think, yeah, but even if I did forget it, and if you've been in the business and done any business, you just go, well, okay, the buyer didn't really deposit it, so we'll just remove it, right? I couldn't be the only one who's had that experience. It's just removed, so we do an addendum that says that, well, the earnest money deposit is zero, and then we close. But I want to go back to what this one said. Then the buyer decides not to close. Is the seller entitled? Let's assume they are. Who's going to pay because you forgot to get the earnest money deposit?
You.
It will be you one way or the other. You are correct. Thanks, Lori. Yep. It's going to be you. You are going to pay for it. Okay. Don't do it.
And Darwin,
Yep. Go ahead, Kevin.
even if it's on the other side, though, if let's say the seller is trying to get out of it, not depositing the EMD sounds like breach of contract to me, and it gives them an out to be able to walk away from the deal.
I am not an attorney, but I would think that you're absolutely right, Kevin.
Okay.
Because they're going to go, well, we're not going to close. You were in breach of contract. Now,
And I've got another buyer waiting behind me that's offering more money anyway. Therefore, your deal is done. I'm taking the next deal.
great scenario. You know what? There's no guaranteeing that a seller could do that, but why give them any ammunition?
Right.
Absolutely. Great one. James got here. How does the two business day EMD requirement by the broker work in relation to EMD delayed deposit agreement? Yeah, great question. For clarification, a great question. The state law, the occupational code, says that a broker must deposit once they have received it within 2 banking days from receipt of acknowledgement of acceptance. Okay? So Emily, who is our newest agent to the Midland office, by the way, I'll make her smile with that one. You're supposed to smile there. There you go, Emily. Thank you. Emily does a great job, gets a buyer. She says that I'll have the earnest money deposit within 5 days from receipt of acceptance, as the purchase agreement states. And then the buyer writes a check and hands it to her. Emily, being the bright, brilliant, great new agent that she is, does exactly what the occupational code says, along with our policy and procedure. and she brings it to the office. We don't have an accepted purchase agreement, but we have an earnest money deposit. Must the brokerage deposit that yet? The answer is no. We don't have receipt of acceptance. So the next day, it's accepted. When must we deposit that? Within 2 banking days. Okay, now obviously we got great admins and it's going to be taken care of right away. But they're only going to know to deposit that if you tell them. However, guess what? If you turn in an earnest money deposit, if you take it, you bring it in. If you bring it in, it will be deposited so that we don't screw up. Okay? So the bottom line becomes this, James, is that the purchase agreement can rule, but it won't allow us to hold on to something that we have received. So the purchase agreement as written allows us to do exactly what you put here. However, if I did 5 days and the offer is accepted in 1 day, then I've only got, well, 5 days to catch it. But once I receive it, then as a brokerage, I have 2 days to deposit it. I think that answered it. That was probably as clear as mud. What if CBP loses my turned in? Well, as long as here, you should always get a receipt that you have turned it into the admin, right? That way it's off your hands. If we lose it, and let's say, by the way, it's lost, well, that's on us. That's on our staff. That's on our admin and management. If it's just a lost check, well, we're going to pay for canceling that check and we're going to ask for a new check. Okay. If it got lost due to our responsibility, it's on us. It's on us. Just the way it would be if you lost a check and they lost $5,000 because you lost their $5,000. It's going to be on you. Okay. Everybody good? Thank you, James. I got that clarified well. All right. Let's see. Under the Michigan Occupational Code, if the MD is in a broker's trust account and if there is a dispute. So this is the next part where we always have those questions. If there is a dispute, the broker cannot release it. That makes sense? What's the only way that we know there's no dispute?
Written agreement.
Written agreement, signed mutual release. That would be that written agreement. Okay. Now, it can be as simple, yeah, Holly, ask. But let me keep going. One, the buyer and seller have agreed in writing, or 2, there's a court order. That's the only way that there is a dispute that we can release earnest money. Well, if there's a mutual release, there's no dispute. No, you could have had a dispute, but the mutual release says, well, give this amount to the buyer, this amount to the seller, and they all sign it. When we're holding it, here's what we know. We want the other broker's signature on it to make sure that they have no claim to any portion of that EMD. Okay? The Occupational Code only requires a written release if the broker is aware that there is a dispute. Well, again, that's where we want written release if. So let me put this another way. We cannot hold if there is no dispute. So we can't release it if there is one, but we cannot hold it if there is not one. So the obvious is to make sure that we have no dispute. As a company, we put something in place to be able to address this. And that is we'll send a return receipt letter to the last known address of a seller, telling them that, look, unless if you notify us of a dispute on the release of this earnest money, we are releasing this to the buyer. If we don't hear from them, then we know we've covered our backside. We were not notified of a dispute. We release it. Okay. James put here, why don't some broker require a mutual release be signed? Doesn't that put them at some kind of legal risk? And yes, that's exactly what it is. You see, most mutual releases are really doing two things. It's in writing that we're dropping this agreement that we had between us as the buyer and seller. That's one of the things that the mutual release does. The other is the agreement on the release of the earnest money deposit, showing that there is no dispute. Okay. So if there are brokerages that do release without, yeah, they're putting themselves at risk. We want to know as soon as possible whether or not there's any dispute to the earnest money deposit. Okay. Let me continue on, and I think it'll also help address that one further. But a written release if the broker is aware that there is a dispute over who is entitled to the EMD. But here's what I want you guys to know. This is the case even when one party's claim to the EMD seems clear under the purchase agreement. Under the law, even in the event of a dispute, a court and not the real estate licensee or brokerage is responsible for interpreting the purchase agreement. Only the court, when there's a dispute and we can't get a mutual release, only the court can do that. Doesn't matter how clear it is. And I could tell you a story of one where it cost a seller $5,000 because it was clear this buyer was walking away for no reason that was given or allowable under the terms of the purchase agreement. I told my agent, I said, if I'm guiding her, I'm telling her, take it. Sign the mutual release, keeping $5,000 of the $10,000 because there's no guarantee if he were to fight that because it was his offer. I'll give you $5,000, you let me out. I don't think he told his seller what I told him. And she said, nope, I want all of it. He went and got an attorney. I had a brief discussion with this attorney. And guess what? Well, I never received the condominium docs. So now he gets the condominium docs, even though, by the way, we can't have direct contact with their buyer, even though the condominium docs were received by their agent, the buyer's agent. He says, we've reviewed the terms of the condominium docs and we don't like what they say. We want all of our earnest money deposit. Here's the mutual release. And this was confirmed by Rick Linnell at the NOC board general membership meeting the other day. It was interesting to finally hear somebody else say it, especially somebody that I respect like Rick, which is take what you can get. How much does an attorney cost? I mean, not that it's a fixed amount. 33%. Take what you can get. Come to an agreement somehow. If it's truly a dispute, come to an agreement somehow. Take what you can get. Note, if there is no dispute, then the broker may release the MD without a signed release. We may do it. Again, we have a procedure to be able to make that happen, but we're making sure that we've exhausted all the other possibilities because we want to have something defensible should a buyer ever come back after us, or a seller, either whichever direction it goes. For their own protection, some brokers will require the buyer and seller sign a mutual release. We are absolutely one of those. And James brought it up with that aspect of why would some companies not do it? Aren't they accepting that additional risk? And the answer is yes. Marietta, I just saw your question. What about arbitration? A buyer and seller may submit for arbitration. Uh, most boards do not have that, so there's still going to be a cost, although it might be less. I think that Lansing board actually has arbitration available. And even then, again, there's still cost for that. But most boards don't offer an arbitration for a buyer and seller. It's got to be against a real estate broker. Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Yeah, so there's definitely costs for arbitration also. Never had to do it, so I don't know what the costs are, how much it might save you, but a broker cannot condition the release of the EMD on the broker or on the buyer and seller releasing the broker from the liability. It's not our money. We can't go, well, if you'll leave us alone as the broker, you leave HRC alone, then we'll release this. Can't be done that way. Okay. There you go. So Lansing does have it available as I thought, and the buyer and seller actually split the cost in regards to the arbiter. Buyers and sellers can always agree to arbitrate even if they didn't. Yeah. So if they can agree to, matter of fact, what James is referring to in the purchase agreement, we have buyer and seller agree to arbitrate, of which essentially I'll say this, I don't think it's good. And the way that I help people, if they actually question that, is by asking a question. Why would you waive your right to a juried trial? If you agree to arbitrate, that's what you're doing. If you leave it blank, you can still arbitrate. But it's versus you have the option of arbitrating versus a court, or versus being committed to arbitrate. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. If there is a dispute over the EMD after the buyer has terminated the purchase agreement, that's supposed to be a comma, not the word comma, the seller is free to sell the home to someone else. I want you to catch this because we're going to tread softly on this one. Let me say this in my own words without nice speak that goes into the written word. The buyer says, hey, Cliff, I don't want the house no more. I am not going to close. The seller could go ahead and sell the property, even though there may be a dispute over the EMD yet. The buyer said, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to close on it. The seller can go ahead and sell it to someone else. But gang, don't take that to be that simple. We need something that shows that the buyer is not moving forward. That could have been an email. That could have been that they didn't show up for a closing. But we need something that says that buyer's not moving forward. They're not going to purchase it. Okay? What I'm going to ask is that when you run into that situation, before you run out and tell the seller that, well, they don't want to buy it, let's sell it to this other person. You probably will want to put a contingency on the acceptance of another offer. And that contingency may be as simple as, this offer is accepted contingent upon full release from a previous or existing offer. Okay? But again, we have the type of company that we have where we have managing broker managers in the office for a reason. Take advantage of them. They're there to help keep you and us out of the courts along with buyers and sellers. The seller's dispute with the first buyer does not need to be resolved before the house is sold. So that's kind of what we just covered. And if there is a dispute over whether the purchase agreement is still valid, the seller should consult legal counsel prior to selling the home to another buyer. Otherwise, see, even though you're talking to your broker manager, we may be in this point where we're going, yeah, you should seek legal counsel before we accept this offer. You should see legal counsel before we close on this deal. Because remember, a seller can only sell a house once. If they've signed a purchase agreement with two people, ooh, that's a big problem. That's a big issue. Questions you got? I believe our Lansing offer states if either party is unhappy with the results and don't come to an agreement, they can pursue. Yep, yep. It's the Lansing board has a separate agreement, and often they'll say that, look, if we're going to need and if we can't, that you're going to have to go get legal remedies. So it's more of a disclosure than it would be for anything else. But yeah, that's I think it is on there if I remember correctly. Guys, we got anything else? Any other questions, thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to say this. Send me your fun stuff, the weird things that you run into. I would love to be able to see them because it's through that I put together the Tuesdays where it's This Week in Real Estate. Because it is kind of one of those. It might be one single hot topic, or it could be a This Week in Real Estate where we got 3 or 4 different things that we're going to address. So, guys, I appreciate it. Again, if you haven't heard or you want to do something different, find out maybe there's a better way for me to be able to do business, join us on the HRC Business Development. That's in my professional's desk in the calendar right on the homepage. And outside of that, guys, I say enjoy what you have outside because outside my weather window, I'm seeing nothing but blue skies. So earn the time off. And if you do go outside, go talk to people. See you guys.